It is it's sometimes hard to remember that we have to take care of ourselves so that we can take care of other people. If you are not aware of what you have going on, of your own mental health, and of what you need, how can you be that for others? So I'm really happy to say that we have CASA here. Miss Ellen Williams from CASA is joining us once again to lead a training for CoC providers, members, and supporters. This is part of the domestic violence training season. Season series. There are a couple more sessions coming up, so please make sure that you register for those as well. And of course, Miss Ellen Williams, if you would like to introduce yourself and take it away.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Can everyone hear me okay? Thumbs up. Cool. All right. Yes, this is Advocate Wellbeing. Thank you again for having me. I see some familiar faces, so I must be doing an okay job because you're here again to hear me out. Um, First of all, again, my name is Ellen Williams. I am the Community Outreach Manager for CASA. Um, Today, we're going to be talking about something that I wish I had an opportunity to talk more about. A lot of people don't ask always for this training, and it's so important. It's as important as learning about some of the other things that we need to know when we're working with our clients. Today, we're going to talk about compassion fatigue. We're going to talk about secondary traumatic stress, vicarious trauma, burnout, and of course, self-care. As always, I start every presentation with the fact that there is triggering context in this presentation. So if anytime you feel uncomfortable or you feel you just need to turn the sound off or get up and walk out, we obviously encourage you to do that because that is self-care. So I will have time for questions at the end. There's a lot of information to get through. So I'm going to try to not go too fast and give you as much information as I can. And we will have questions at the end of the presentation. Okay? So, first thing we're going to talk about is positive impact of advocacy, because yes, we're going to be talking about some of the negative things about advocacy, but there's a lot of positive things to say about advocacy as well. Um, it's not always just looking at the negative and always talking about the importance of self-care. Something that I kind of equate it to, it's like having a battle buddy. We belong to advocates belong to a very tight-knit community. The people that we work with, especially if you are doing the same type of thing, there's no one else that knows what you're dealing with and the things that you hear and the clients that you talk to. So it's something it is a very tight knit community, and it is something that you're all in this together. So that's a positive impact of advocacy. Also feeling like you're making a difference. There's people that you're helping. And that is something that no matter what's going on, how you're dealing with your workload, to keep in mind that you are making a difference in somebody's life. And with that, there is a healing power in activism. There is something about standing up for somebody else and helping them get through whatever trials and tribulations they're getting through. So just want to start that out with the positive impact of advocacy and the positive part of what it is that we do. So first, we're going to start with what compassion fatigue is. Compassion fatigue is the physical, emotional, and psychological impact of helping others. It is through experiences of stress or trauma. It is emotional and physical exhaustion that results from being involved in emotionally demanding situations over a period of time. It is observable reactions to working with people who have been traumatized, and it does mirror symptoms like PTSD. Um, with compassion fatigue, it's almost like you're going to see there's like tiers that we're going to get. A lot of the things that we're going to talk about have a lot of the same symptoms, but they tend to get worse. And right now, with compassion fatigue, you still care about what's going on. You still care about your job. You're still compassionate. You still have empathy. But it's becoming difficult because the truth is you're exhausted. Um, Compassion fatigue is sometimes compared to burnout, but burnout is more a cumulative sense of stress. It's kind of a buildup when someone's burnt out, and we'll get to burnout at some point, but we'll start with compassion fatigue because this is kind of the beginning of, okay, what's going on? Um, Some of the symptoms of compassion fatigue are listed here. There's anxiety, sleep disturbance. I'll move down around withdrawal, isolation, anger, feeling overwhelmed. Even your appetite changes. And again, you're going to see a lot of these same symptoms as we move forward. They just seem to get to a degree higher. They seem to affect your life on a worse level. Signs of compassion fatigue can be feelings of helplessness and powerlessness, in the face of dealing with a client and dealing with a client suffering. You start having reduced feelings of empathy and sensitivity. They're not gone completely, but you are starting to feel overwhelmed. You are exhausted by your work demands, and you're starting to, those feelings of empathy are starting to kind of slip away a little bit. You could even start feeling detached, even start feeling emotionally disconnected. Um, some other signs are loss of interest in activities, um, especially ones that you used to enjoy. You're just not into it anymore. And you can actually start feeling physical symptoms with compassion fatigue, like headaches and upset stomach and even nausea. So another thing is it can start kind of seeping into your personal relationships. You're starting to kind of bring some of this stuff home, some of this anxiety, some of this anger, and it's starting to creep into and create conflicts in your personal relationships. And you're starting to neglect your own self-care. And we'll get into self-care, but things like not getting enough sleep or not eating right, not taking care of yourself. So this is some of the symptoms of compassion fatigue. And again, this is kind of like your bottom tier of what we're going to talk about today. So what is secondary trauma stress? This is indirect exposure to trauma. It's often through discussion of traumatic events or direct caregiving. This can cause trauma for the actual person that's being the caregiver that's listening to the trauma. Secondary trauma typically develops when you're just hearing someone's trauma. It's intense, it's persistent, it's constant, it's something that you hear over and over again. For us at CASA, we deal with domestic violence survivors. So that's what we hear all day long is what our survivors have been dealing with, what their abusers have been doing to them to have power and control over their lives. So um, people with secondary trauma who are the caregiver in caregiver positions, they sometimes will start not being able to care for their clients, for their patients, because the empathy again is starting to slip away. Um, the compassion fatigue is one thing, it's starting to get weary, but now this trauma is starting to affect you. It's starting to stress you out. Again, much like PTSD, your empathy, your effectiveness, your sound decision making are starting to take a toll. Here is some physical symptoms, some of secondary trauma stress. Um, again, it's going to go down the line. You're going to see a lot of this as through the conversations that we have about the different conditions. Stomach aches, fatigue, some emotional symptoms, being overwhelmed, having intense negative feelings, mood swings, cognitive symptoms, negative pessimistic thinking, heightened awareness of outside threats, starting to get a little paranoid, starting to feel like some of the things that you've been listening to are starting to creep into how you look at life. Social symptoms, withdrawal, isolation, irritability. Some of the symptoms of secondary traumatic stress can even go as far as constantly imagining or reliving traumatic events. Um, Hearing stories over and over again of what maybe your client or your patient is dealing with, listening to that and imagining it and reliving it. Um, you start feeling guilty because you um, feel like maybe that you're not doing enough. You start getting irritable because you feel like you're not doing enough. You can start having feelings of isolation, hopelessness, persistent anger. You start avoiding people, even maybe avoiding your own everyday activities. Um, you're starting to see your anxiety increase, or you have a sense of sadness. Um, you can even affect like you're jumpy, you're, hyper vigilant. Are always looking at the corner of your eye, that kind of thing. Um, it can start affecting your decision making. You have trouble concentrating. Um, and of course, that one that I think affects almost all of us at some point is that difficulty sleeping. Um, Sometimes you even have nightmares. You can have nightmares about even your clients and some of their trauma that they're going through. So that is some of the things that we deal with when we're looking at secondary traumatic stress. So next on that tier is, what is vicarious trauma? Vicarious trauma is stress from working in a field directly with a client who is dealing with trauma. You see it in law enforcement, you see it in victim services and social services like what we do, criminal justice, children's services. And it's gotten to a point now where it's starting to change your beliefs in the system. It's starting to affect your worldview almost. It's just, you're starting to get to a place where you're negative and you're pessimistic and you feel defeated and you're sad. And it's really starting to affect your life. It's not like, there's going to be days. We all have days when we're dealing with the clients that we're dealing with, when we're dealing with survivors that we're dealing with. There's going to be days. And especially when one of those stories come in and it's like, wow, and it gets you right here. But vicarious trauma is when it's that trauma is so intense that it's starting to affect really how you see the world and how you move about the world. So it's something to really, really keep an eye on. Um, Here's some symptoms, like I said, intrusive thoughts, trouble concentrating, emotional distress, changes in worldview, as I said before. There could be physical symptoms. Um, Vicarious trauma can be very different. Each individual experiences vicarious trauma differently. Um, like I said before, it can be difficulty in managing your emotions. You can even start feeling emotionally numb. Like before, at that first stage, you're kind of starting to, lose empathy. And then now you're just kind of like, and now with vicarious trauma, you're just numb to it. You almost start shutting down. Um, Fatigue and sleeplessness can get very severe. Um, Not only do you have trouble, difficulty falling asleep, but it can, you wake up in the middle of the night because of the level of stress that you're dealing with. Um, and then you start avoiding, you start avoiding work colleagues, family members. You don't want to deal with your clients or your constituents or your patients as much. You start taking on, it's just getting too much and it's starting to affect really every aspect of your life. So vicarious trauma is something when we start seeing it, we need to really start paying attention. Again, conditions that can amplify vicarious trauma, this things that can make it worse, is starting to isolate yourself, either in your personal life or even in your job, kind of staying away from people. Um, you're starting to avoid feelings. You're having difficult expressing those feelings, expressing those emotions. Um, withdraw, you assign blame to others in stressful situations. Um, that constant and intense exposure to trauma with little or no variation in work tasks can be something that literally wears at your psyche. You have to be able to step away, and I don't know how it works wherever it is that you work, but I know something that we are very conscious of here at CASA is when our caseworkers bring a survivor back and we talk with them and we deal with them and we do what we need to do. We always make sure that our caseworkers take a minute, take a beat, especially if you just walked out of a meeting with somebody that there was some intense conversations going on. Um, And also lack of an effective and supportive process, not being able to have someone to talk to, whether it's a coworker, whether it's a supervisor, your team leader, that kind of thing. That's so important to have a team leader that supports you. Here's some suggestions for coworkers. If you believe that a coworker might be experiencing um, some reactions to vicarious trauma, um, help them to maybe set up a work to home transition that can create an important boundary. I was having some issues with this last year, and I brought it up to my primary care. And she said that something as simple as doing something physical could help. I may have even brought this up. You may have even been there in one of my presentations, but um, she takes her name tag when she gets in the car and she has that last phone call, she takes her name tag off. And the minute that it goes into her console in her car, she stops being Dr. Ellis and she becomes Mama Ellis. And it's just that physical. And I brought props, but I we have name tags that we wear just to get us in and out of the building. And this is what I started doing. I put it on when I come in the morning, and when I get in my car, I take it off. And it sounds so simple, but just having some kind of physical action to set those boundaries, it's amazing what it kind of does to your brain. It kind of switches you off. So that's something maybe you can suggest to a coworker, try to help them with a work to home transition. Encourage them, to just attend to themselves. Are you getting sleep? Are you eating well? Get up and walk around the room if you need to. Get that exercise, move your body. Um, Support them connecting with friends. Have you talked to your partner? Have you talked to a friend or a family or another coworker? Or have you um, spoken to sometimes people that are, have spiritual leaders? Have you spoken to anybody who maybe could help you on that level? Um, I would assume I shouldn't, but that most of us, what we do, our employers provide some type of EAP program, employee assistance program, encourage them to do that, and encourage them to talk about it with their supervisor. If it's getting to that point where it's affecting who you are and how you move in the world and what you think about, it might be time to have that discussion with your supervisor and get suggestions as to what you can do. Some suggestions for anyone who's in leadership, any team leaders here, any bosses, any managers. Um, Make sure this is something you talk about as part of your supervision. Whether you get together, once a week or every 2 weeks or however it is that you get together, make sure this is a discussion you have. Don't just talk about your numbers and how are things going and if we reached our quota and that kind of thing. How are you doing really? How are you feeling? What happened this week that maybe affected you? Examine why something may have triggered you, or examine why you didn't handle this the way maybe you would have handled something else. What are your trigger areas? There may be a place where your supervisor should go, you know what, listen, that is obviously something that triggers you. Why don't we give that kind of client um, to another caseworker? When you're talking to leadership and leadership has your back, there may be a way that you guys can work around those things that may be difficult for you to handle right now. Leadership, allow for flexible work schedules. I know it's not easy to do, but you have to recognize the need for downtime. You have to be able to let your staff get up and walk around or tune it out or turn it off when necessary. People that are working with clients or patients or survivors or victims are dealing with some heavy stuff. And sometimes we just need 10, 15, 20 minutes to walk away from it. So please allow for flexible work schedules. Um, Maybe even go as far as creating a physical space or creating a time, 15 minutes in the morning and 15 minutes in the afternoon, to allow your staff to take that time away. And obviously, when appropriate, when you feel like, listen, I think, we've been talking about this, and just from what you've told me, I really want to refer you to, EPI. I think that you need to um, talk to somebody. I think this is something that is worth talking to a professional about. Now, I know all of those things that I just said are not always easy, especially in the line of work that we do. But if it's something that we can think about, if it's something that we just always have in the back of our mind, that we have to allow for flexible work schedules, that we create time and physical space to take a beat. We have the conversation about these things. It's all going to help in the long run with your mental health. So what is burnout? Burnout is a form of exhaustion caused by constantly feeling overwhelmed, emotionally drained, and preventing one from keeping up with life's demands. This is, like I said, that building up of the other conditions we were talking about. This is a result of excessive and prolonged emotional, physical, and mental stress. And it usually develops over time. It develops when you're not some of those earlier steps, taking some action, not self-caring, not taking a minute. That over time, when you just keep piling it on, this is what happens. And this is ultimately, we don't want any of this to happen, but certainly the burnout. We don't want this to be something that is now literally, emotionally, physically, mentally taking over. Again, some symptoms of burnout. A lot of the same things that you saw in the other conditions, a lot of the same symptoms, but now cynicism is in there, anxiety is in there, um, depression is now can be very prevalent in your life, withdrawing from, having antisocial behavior. Um, Burnout is can be very severe, and it can feel like you've lost all your energy, you're exhausted, you are starting to check out on some of the things that maybe previously you didn't check out on, you were interested in, or you were passionate about, or it was important to you. Um, Having a negative outlook, your cynicism, um, just the way you feel about your job and maybe what it is that you do, a sense of hopelessness, skepticism, a sense of being angry or irritable all the time, um, insomnia. Before you may have had trouble sleeping or having trouble staying asleep, but now you're just not sleeping. It's really affecting you. That and of course, lack of sleep affects everything. Um, and then of course, your professional efficacy, your effectiveness in what you do and what you say and how you're helping your clients. It's starting to take a toll. Insomnia is probably the most common physical symptom of burnout. Like I said before, a few minutes ago, we probably at some point, whether it has to do with our job or something else, have if we've had any kind of trauma, we've probably had some form of insomnia. I know I've suffered from it from in the past. Um, and the reason it's so serious is because it can so affect your physical and mental health. It has such a negative impact on your physical and mental health. So if you're having trouble sleeping completely, that could be definitely a sign of burnout. You're starting to suffer from headaches, and severe headaches, especially tension headaches, the ones that run in your shoulder and up your neck. I never get headaches. I'm one of those lucky people that don't. So I'm convinced when I get one, I must have a brain tumor because I never, ever, ever get them. So when I do get them, I pay attention. It's like, what's going on that I'm getting this headache? And it usually is a tension headache. It's usually because I'm stressed out about something, but you're starting to get them frequently and they're getting more severe. This is something to think about. Is this a symptom? Is this a sign of burnout? Something else, jaw clenching. You see that a lot, or teeth grinding. A lot of people will that suffer from burnout clench their jaw or grind their teeth when they sleep. you may start having muscle tension and pain. Um, Severe Charlie horses, severe, all of a sudden something is just, all of a sudden your shoulder's hurting and you have no idea what happened. Now, also, I take into account when you get to a certain age, you could pull something and you have no idea how you pulled it. But I'm talking when you're starting to see chronic muscle tension. You're starting to feel it. You always feel like you could really use a good massage. Burnout can definitely be a cause of that. Um, High blood pressure, stress and burnout can lead to hypertension, which we all know can be a very, very serious thing if it goes untreated, and also digestive and gastrointestinal issues. I actually had someone that I worked with that developed TBI. You can get cramps and stomach pains, heartburn, even as far as vomiting, can't keeping your food down, severe constipation, severe diarrhea. I mean, it really can affect what's going on in your system. Change of appetite. Um, I'm a comfort food girl. When I get stressed, I look for carbs. So that can definitely sometimes be a sign of burnout when you're starting to seek comfort food. And it also can be the other side. You're not eating as much. You feel almost nauseous when you eat. You have to kind of force yourself to eat. Substance abuse can also be a sign of burnout. Um, and I'm not talking about going out, with your colleagues after work and having a beer, or, going out with your girls for margarita night or anything like that. Obviously, we all need to burn off steam, and there's nothing wrong with that. What I'm talking about is when you're starting to rely on alcohol or other mind altering substances because you are trying to cope. You're trying to forget, you're trying to go to sleep because you're dealing with insomnia. When it's becoming something that you need in order to almost check out, that could be a sign of burnout. And panic attacks. I used to suffer from these when I was younger. Over the years, I've just learned to deal with them. Um, and they're terribly scary if you've never had one. They are literally feel like you're having a heart attack, sweating, shortness of breath, heart palpitations, chills, chest pains. This sense of terror comes over you. It's that losing control. You at times feel like you're going to. I actually went to the hospital twice from it, because I thought I was certain that I was dying, and then I get there and it's an anxiety attack or a panic attack, and they're horrible. And over the years, I've learned to deal with them. I very rarely get them now because I do practice self-care, because I am aware of the things that are trigger me or that can possibly lead to burnout. So if I do have one, which is very rare, I also know I know what's happening. I know that I'm not dying and have to rush to the hospital. But panic attacks, they are a big sign of burnout. So these are just some things that to be aware of, to pay attention to. So how to know if an employee is suffering from burnout? Well, it's not always easy because what we do for a living on a whole, it can be stressful. Um, but exhaustion is literally the depletion of emotional resources to cope. This person is overwhelmed. You can tell they're overwhelmed. They're stressed out. You're seeing behavior changes. You're seeing mood changes. You're seeing a cynicism that you've not seen before. They have just a different attitude towards their job. Sometimes it comes out in a disgruntled employee, especially if it's someone that really didn't have those traits before. And again, their, reduction in productivity, their in efficacy, they're not effective in their job. They don't have the same passion or the same care, they have a cynical attitude. There's almost this sense of they've given up, they've given up trying. So this is again something to be aware of if it's somebody that's on your team, if you're a team leader, if it's someone that you work with, just some things to uh, keep your antennas up. So burnout can happen when we expect too much of ourselves. And I think the fact that we do this, um, is just, of course, we expect too much of ourselves. We're helping people. We put a lot of pressure on ourselves. Sometimes we put unreasonable demands upon ourselves, because we care. And that's the bottom line. We wouldn't do what we do if we didn't care about the people that we're working with. So we can get to a place where we never feel like, what we're doing is good enough. We're not able to do enough. You feel inadequate, you feel incompetent, you feel unappreciated. And leadership, any leaders that are out there, this is big, this is huge. Appreciating the people that work with you, and letting them know that can really make a difference. So make sure that's one way to, it can't necessarily completely stop burnout, but it can definitely help with somebody's mental health if they know that they're appreciated, if they know what they're doing, the work that they're doing is making a difference and somebody appreciates that work. Um, so obviously, supporting them and being there for them. And also, burnout can happen when you're just not a good fit for this. We had a lovely young lady who worked here. She was a case manager, one of the kindest people you'll ever know. And our clients loved her, our survivors loved her. And she just had this amazing, empathetic soul. And our survivors felt it. And but the thing is that she was taking it on too much. It was starting to affect her, and she recognized it. And she gave it a college try. She wanted to do this. She wanted to be a part of it. But the bottom line is this role was just not a good fit for her. And so that can happen with some people because they feel like they so want to do this. They so want to be a part of it, but it's just not a good fit. So burnout can happen with that as well. I'm giving you this information as a burnout test. This is something that we give out here, we pass along. And if somebody, I think either Megan or Victoria could put into the chat for everybody that test link, it's a really good way to self-assess yourself. It's a good screening tool to kind of see where you're at. It can give you a sense of what your strengths are, what your vulnerabilities are. It kind of gives you a baseline of symptoms. You know, a lot of times, and we'll talk a little bit more about it later on, but a lot of times you're not even aware because you're in it. And so kind of knowing that baseline and where you're at and just kind of getting a gauge can be very helpful in the self-care that you may need. And we all need it. So some of the tips that we go over to avoid job burnout, obviously set realistic goals. Um, unreachable demands can be have such an influence on your psyche. Um, and you can get to a place where it feels like everything's impossible. So try to put an emphasis on projects and goals that are reachable to give you a sense of satisfaction. Try to set those realistic goals. Um, prioritize your time and your tasks. Try to make sure that there's a certain time that you do this and there's a certain time you do that. Try to keep yourself as organized as possible. Um, do things that you're passionate about. Make time for hobbies, special interests, reading books that you want to read, or watching a movie, or crafting, or just going to the beach, things that make you feel good. Try to incorporate that into your life as much as possible. Um, reach out for support. Um, take breaks. I am very guilty of this. I will go and get my lunch and bring it right back over to my desk and stop working. And I'm over here doing a presentation on self-care for advocates. And I am so guilty of it. I think we probably all are because we all have so much to do and we have so many people to take care of. But try to utilize those breaks. um, Try to not take your work to home. Um, get up and walk around. Get up, and if you need a second, as I said before, and sorry, and I'll say it probably before the presentation's over, you know, stretch, get up and walk around the building, get out and do something, just to clear your mind for a minute. Um, Managers encourage work-life balance. Make sure that your staff, your team, they are going to their partners, whatever, promotion, or they're going to their child's recital. Make sure that they're not taking too much on, and that they are utilizing that work-life balance, that they are making sure that they uh, take that time for their family or whatever it is that they need to do. Take your time off, your PTO. Um, Not only do we encourage PTO here, we encourage you to schedule it early so you have something mentally to look forward to. And we also encourage mental health days here. There are days where, you can wake up and you physically don't feel good, but there's also days that you wake up and I mentally don't feel good. And that's okay. And you need those mental health days. So supervisors, managers, make sure that that is something that your staff and your people know, that if you need that, take it. Take that PTO if it's needed. So what is self-care? Definition of it: it's the act of attending to one's physical or mental health. It generally is without medical or professional consultation. It basically is just taking care of you, and whatever that looks like. Why do you need a self-care? Bottom line is you can't draw water from an empty well. And I think Victoria said something kind of close to that at the beginning. Um, Advocates can get preoccupied with their caseload and their work responsibilities. Um, you feel like you need to always meet the needs of others. Um, you also in a place where you don't feel like you're vulnerable to fatigue. You don't feel like you're stressed out or maybe have, a slight depression. You make other people's needs, you make them a priority instead of yourself. So that's why self-care is important, because advocates tend to do this. This is what we do. And it's important because we can't be effective. We can't provide the services and the support. It is an absolute necessity, and a responsibility for us to take care of ourselves in order to continue to do what we do on an effective level. And something else, just on a personal note, because I tend to be that person. It's like, I'm fine. I'm fine. I got this. Um, and you may feel that way. So listen to your friends and family too. When someone says to you, I had an incident where my mother brought it up. She says, you seem melancholy. And I'm like, no, I'm okay. And she's like, no, I know you. Something's going on with you. And it forced me to kind of take a minute and think about, what was going on with work or life or whatever the case may be. Um, and so it's important to, even if you're not believing yourself, if you're refusing to kind of see what's going on, if somebody brings it up to you or somebody says something, listen to them and take a minute and kind of figure that out. Because it's important. We're not always self-aware because we are always taking care of somebody else. We are always putting somebody else's needs in front of ours. So some of the ways you can practice self-care is to eat right. This is not easy to do, but it could be literally something like eating more vegetables and fruit, because we all know that too processed food is not good. And the healthier food that you put into your body is going to help you physically with your health, with your mind. Um, even if you can eat one vegetable or fruit a day, just trying to change something. Eating the right foods not only can help stress levels, it can help with memory loss. It can help with inflammation. Um, if you can't maybe have the time or whatever to pack a lunch, throw in a healthy snack. Just get something in there. Choose something um, to work towards eating better, to eating right. Um, also, something that I do, I try to do, I'm not, again, not always great at it, but I do it most of the time is on Sunday, I'll kind of prepare for the week. I put lunches together so that way I know what I'm going to be eating. It also makes it easier for me to just go get my lunch and bring it back to the desk, which is defeating the purpose. However, um, getting good food in your body is really important, and it is a way to practice self-care. Also, drinking more water. This sounds like a basic one, but drinking more water throughout the day can literally make you feel healthier. It gives you energy. I actually drink 32, I don't know if you can see it, 32 ounces a day, or at least 32 ounces a day. I've gotten kind of used to it now, but when I first started it, I thought I was going to die because I was literally in the restroom all the time. But what happens is your body starts getting used to it and it's something that it needs. And so that kind of regulates. But I can't tell you just by drinking more water how much better I feel. Um, even my skin and my hair is better. I mean, it does give me more energy. And a lot of times when you're stressed and whatever, and you think that you're hungry, drink water, and that kind of helps with that hunger as well. So drinking water is a really basic, easy way to practice self-care. Um, Also, make sleeping a priority. Um, Sleeping affects so much of who we are the next day if we don't get enough sleep. And so, excuse me, you know, try to develop a routine if at all possible. I know it's hard if maybe you're a caretaker of someone or you have children or whatever the case may be, but if you can try to develop a routine, sleep routine, don't drink caffeine at night. I can only have a cup a day in the morning, or I'm on the wall. But try not to drink caffeine at night because caffeine, regardless of how used to your body is to it, it still will keep you awake. Um, Try to turn off electronics at night, at least an hour before you go to bed, whether it's your TV, whether it's your phone, your tablet, whatever the case may be. Um, you can use things like lavender. Lavender helps relax you, and they've got lavender sprays that you can put on your pillows and that kind of thing. Deep breathing is huge for really anything, not only helping you go to sleep, but even keeping your stress levels down. There's sleep apps, there's sleep masks, there's white noise machines. I use a white noise machine, um, and I don't know how it works, but somehow it keeps my brain from being distracted and it helps me go to sleep. So if it's something that you're struggling with, focus on that. Figure out how you can get to sleep, get the sleep that you need. That is a huge, huge, huge part of self-care. Exercise. If you're one of those people that likes to exercise, good for you. I am not. And so it is something that I try to do when I can. I try to walk my dog. But even just getting up and, like I said, getting up and walking around the building, um, getting up and stretching, getting up and, just moving does basically it helps so much in your physical and your mental. You've heard of the endorphin thing, so it is proven to literally help your brain and help your stress level. um Saying no. This is a hard one, and probably especially for people like us that are caregivers, that work with clients, that work with people in need. It is not always easy to say no, but it is something that we need to practice. Many of us in our job and sometimes in our personal life, we feel obligated. But when you're already overworked, when you're already dealing with stress, saying no is setting boundaries, and it is 100% a form of self-care. Somebody that one of when I did a presentation before, one of the participants said that when someone calls that she knows is going to keep her on the phone, she has started just right when they call, say, "Hey, how are you? I've only got 15 minutes." And it kind of just sets the tone. I've got 15 minutes to chat, and then I'm going to have to get off. And it makes it easier when they do get off the phone, then you don't feel guilty about it. I started doing mommy Sundays where I just tell my husband and my son, unless something is burning or broken or falling off, I am off limits to you today. I usually do that on Sundays. I can't do it every Sunday because unfortunately life gets in the way, but trying to say no and just set boundaries and making sure that you have some time for you and what you can handle is very much a form of self-care. Request time off. I talked about this before. PTO is important. It is important to get away from what you do. It is also extremely helpful when you plan ahead because, again, it just gives you something to look forward to. And it doesn't necessarily have to be, oh, I'm going on vacation. Take a few days and relax at home. Sometimes, you've got a laundry list of chores that need to get done, and you're dealing with work and you're dealing with life. And sometimes just taking a day or two to get some of those chores done, sometimes that can actually relieve stress because there's things that you know that need to get done that you can get done now. Um, Catching up on your sleep, spending time with your partner, picking up your kid from school and going and doing something with them. Um, Sometimes doing absolutely nothing, just laying on the couch and watching mindless television is self-care because you just need to walk away from it. Um, and if this is for you, socialize with your coworkers. Again, as I talked about, something that advocates have in common is we're all in this together. And so having coworkers and colleagues that you can socialize with, that you can make a connection with, that you can have lighthearted conversation with, um, can also be a form of self-care. So if that's something that you're into, we encourage you to do that, to socialize with your coworkers. So body-based techniques. One of the reasons that we bring this up is because we know that if you're able to ground yourself, it can bring down your stress levels. Um, when you're stressed out, the limbic brain takes over and you can be in a state of fight, flight, or flee. And I know a little bit about this because I actually have a child who's on the spectrum. And I learned about this because he is always in a state of fight or flight, or at least when he was little. He's gotten better through maturity and has learned to deal with it and such. But it's basically, it affects your attention span. It affects your impulses, your memory, your ability to regulate your emotions. So it makes sense that when your limbic brain takes over when you're stressed out, because that's the part that takes over when you're feeling stressed, it makes sense that all of those things are affected. So just learning what grounds you, learning that things like moving your body, as I said before, step away from your screen, write down a to-do list, stand up and walk around, go up and down the stairs, do chair stretches, um, self-soothe. I know this is so silly, but I'm going to show you. Literally just wrapping your arms around as tight as you can and giving yourself a hug. Believe it or not, moving your body in that way almost releases stress. Try it. Don't do it now, but try it. Anything to move your body is going to help ground you. It's going to help release some of that stress that you're carrying around with you. Do second, do a 20-second deep belly breathing. As I said before, breathing is a biggie. Breathing can help you fall asleep. It can help you with stress. And take a picture of this if you want, or you can probably go online. I'm sure there's plenty of things online that you can find about how to do a 20-second deep belly breathing. But stop yourself. we encourage our advocates here that, after you've seen a client, especially if it's been, a heavy one, a hard one, give yourself a minute and take in, inhale, exhale. That's something, again, a body-based technique that can help bring your stress level down. Incorporate your five senses because, again, one of the things that I learned with my son's autism is that those senses, my son has a form of sensory processing disorder, and the way that he takes things into his body has a huge effect on how he can regulate his emotions. So again, these body-based techniques on how to relieve stress make complete sense to me. So when you incorporate those five senses, put a picture of your dog or the beach or your favorite car or whatever makes you happy. Have that there to look at. Um, Maybe when you're taking a 5-minute break, maybe listen to some relaxing music. Or if you're in between and you're working on something where you can listen to music, listen to some relaxing music, listen to something. Smell, whether it's lavender or peppermint. Those both are smells that can help release stress, that bring your stress levels down. Chocolate, I'm a firm believer in having chocolate on hand if necessary. And that's a good way to incorporate, your taste buds. Again, incorporating those senses. And even having something like a fuzzy blanket or something that you can touch. I actually, again, I have props. I have a worry stone that I use sometimes, especially when I'm on meetings or something like that. Again, you're incorporating your senses. My son, he uses fidget toys, different things. He now, because he's older now, but he'll even use a Rubik's Cube, just something to kind of, again, incorporate those senses to bring that stress level down. So, again, some really easy techniques that can help you. And I encourage all of you to, I'm sure there's something online as well, but this is a self-care checklist. As you can see, it's to take care of you physically, emotionally, socially, psychologically, spiritually, your professional life. It's important to be aware of these things and take care of them. Um, so much of what we do is taking care of others. So much of what we do is worrying about other people. And regardless of where you're at in your professional life and what stage you're at and how long you've been doing this or whatever the case may be, it's going to affect us. Even if we've learned to deal with it on certain levels, it's not a bad idea to have a self-care checklist. Am I taking care of myself? And it's almost impossible to do all of these things. We're aware of that. But if you can at least have this checklist and make sure that you are exercising, make sure that you are going for a walk or you're resting when you're sick. That's something that I think we're all guilty of, is not taking care of ourselves when we're sick. Are you spending time with loved ones? Are you doing things that you like to do? Um, are you getting your alone time? Are you meditating or praying or getting your breathing in? Are you um, actively working on preventing burnout for yourself? Is that something you're actively doing? So this is a really good list to keep on hand, I think. I think it could be helpful. And again, you could take a picture of this. I'm sure there's plenty of other lists online. You can find anything you need online nowadays, but it's not a bad idea to just keep something kind of like cheat a cheat sheet for self-care. So I will now open up the floor to any questions that someone may have.
I have a question, Ellen.
Hi, Andrew.
Hi. Can you put or Victoria put that link in the chat from earlier?
Yeah, yeah, I will try. Yes, I can do that. Hold on one second. I apologize.
No, it's okay.
I'm so technically not good at this.
I
Hold
think
on one
I think
second.
I did, Ellen, the burnout
Oh,
test. Is that it?
Yeah,
Was
I
that
don't
it?
see
Yeah, the
it.
test.
Okay, let me. Oh, because I direct messaged it. Oh, jeez. That's why nobody saw it. There we go. I'm sorry,
Okay,
everybody.
thank you.
Thanks, Megan.
Any other questions that you may have?
Question, just a comment. This is
Oh,
Atik,
okay.
but
Hi.
yeah, I worked at a domestic violence shelter also, and I think it's great that you guys do honor PTO and all that type of stuff. Not every place does, but I think that's fantastic. Really,
Thank you.
yeah.
Yeah, we do. It's one of the things that I have to say, that I commend CASA that they do. They're very big about PTO and our supervisors on a regular basis. I've been under two supervisors here, and it is as much part of our meeting, going over our numbers and what our goals are. It's as much part of our conversations, as that is, how are you? What's going on with you? Have you taken some time off this month? Did you take an afternoon off? Take off early and go get your kid. What's going on with you? It's really big. And it really should be a priority for everybody because, what we do is not easy. And it can take a toll on us. And so it is a huge part of self-care. And so I hope if there's any leadership, any supervisors, any managers that are on here, of course, and I know your hands are tied too. You're only allowed to do what you can do, but just something always to keep in mind. I put this QR code up here. We always like feedback. It's not mandatory by any means, but any kind of feedback, more information you'd like. Did I give you enough information? Was there something else you would have liked to have learned about? Anything like that, we always welcome your feedback. It's not mandatory or necessary, but we always appreciate it. Are there any other questions that you might have? Did I give you guys some good information today? I hope. I hope some stuff that you can take away.
I think so, Ellen. You always lead a really great training session. And I really appreciate it. I think that we talk a lot about compassion fatigue and about self-care, but actually taking a moment to talk about what that means and how we take care of ourselves is really, really valuable. So, thank you for doing this. And thank you very much for leading all of our other domestic violence trainings. We're really grateful to you. And thank you to everybody who participated. If you need something that signifies you participated in this training for your work purposes, please let us know and we'll make sure we get something to you. Otherwise, I hope to see you at our next training. And just thank you so, so much, Ellen. Thank you to you
Thank
and
you.
all the folks at CASA.
Thank you so much for having me as always. You guys have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you. Have a good
Thank
one,
you,
everybody.
Ellen.
Bye-bye.
Bye.